What's up, everybody? I did a video a couple videos back about the creation story from the Six Nations here, but I was saving the best part. They got a story about who they call the holder of the heavens, who came down and basically taught them all of the civilized arts. And one thing I've noticed about all of these indigenous tribes all around the world is they say that the gods taught them songs and dances. So I guess that could be like teaching your dog to roll over or something, just cute little singing and dancing humans. Or it could be the fact that one tribe that's been recorded had like 6,000 songs or something. And they were recalling specific details like names and locations from thousands and thousands of years before. So it could have a practical reason. But case in point, they've got a story in here about the Stonish giants from like 2,000 years ago, according to what they say. They also have a record of some great cataclysms that the timing on one of them is really interesting. But let's start with the earliest records of the Americas. In part one, they have a creation story about North America specifically. They call it the Great Island on the turtle's back, But they were clear that the Great Island is America. In the ancient days, the Great Island appeared upon the big waters. The earth brought forth trees, herbs, vegetation, and the creation of land animals. The Iroquois people were two created and resided in the north regions. And after a time, some of the people become giants and committed outrages upon the inhabitants. After many years, a body of Iroquois people encamped on the bank of a majestic stream and was named Kanawagi, now St. Lawrence. Now, let me break that down a little bit. The people too were created and resided in the north regions. This is a story of them coming to the St. Lawrence River area thousands of years ago. So north of there is like ancient Hyperborea. So, you've got woolly mammoths with fresh flowers in their mouths up in Siberia and the northern regions. I've done a video about the boneyard guy over in Alaska that has mined out whole hillsides that are just full of animals crushed up in there. He's got like a mammoth shoulder blade, a big, thick piece of bone with another bone jabbed through it. And you've got tropical forests found up in Norway, so different climate back at this time. Then something happened, they moved south. And they're not the only ones that made their way to America. After a long time, a number of foreign people sailed from ports unknown, but unfortunately, before they reached their destination, the winds drove them contrary. At length, they're shipwrecked somewhere on the southern part of the great island, and many of their crew perished. A few active persons were saved. They obtained some implements, and each of them was covered with a leather bag. The big hawks carried them on the summit of a mountain and remained there but a short time. There's actually quite a few native legends about birds carrying people off. But then they got off of the mountain, built themselves a fort, and after many years, the foreign people became numerous and extended their settlements, but afterwards they were destroyed by the monsters that overrun the country. About that time, the Iroquois people inhabited that area. So they're saying there were foreigners and them living here in this area. But they could not enjoy tranquility as they were invaded by giants called Ronin who came from the north and inhabited considerably. Then they go into a bunch of stories about fighting these Ronin. So they say this is like 3,000 years ago, and they came from the north down to here, the St. Lawrence River area, and basically they spread out some at times, but the core group stayed here. Other people had come over, they sailed over, they became numerous, but then were destroyed by the monsters of the country, the way they put it. So that could be bears, wolves, and mountain lions run amok, or the giant Ronin, but they didn't make it. So I was reading the last few pages of this last night and about fell out, because this is pretty much spot on the smoking gun of my whole static history theory, which is about 700 years ago, there was a big cataclysm that wiped out the majority of the Earth's population, seemed to have changed weather patterns and climatic zones. And I've had some records of this in Europe and China, but you can see the effects of this in North America because the Mississippian culture went away, the Anasazi, but guess no more. Here's a first-hand account. He writes here, perhaps about 150 years before Columbus discovered America. So Columbus was 1492 minus 150, that's 1342. What was happening in Europe at that time? The Black D took out 50 million, some accounts say up to 200 million, but a huge portion of the population. And all of the droughts and floods and earthquakes and yada yada. So about 150 years before Columbus, the 1340s, about this time, an earthquake was felt throughout the kingdom. It's supposed a large comet fell into some of the lakes, and other signs were seen in the heavens. The defender ceased from visiting the people in bodily form, but appeared to the prophet. We'll get to that in a minute. So it's kind of short but sweet. That's a huge statement right there because, hey, there's a first-hand account of what I've been saying this whole time. They supposed that it was a comet that fell, and that there were a lot of other signs seen in the heavens, so things probably breaking apart and electrical storms and everything else. And, I guess it could be something internal with the Earth that happened, but my most likely bet is a comet impact something. Now, could this have been the Carolina Bays impact event just 700 years ago? I don't know. It's certainly the right region for it, but they say the Carolina Bays was 13,000 years ago. Now, they have all of their reasons for this 13,000 years ago, and they say this had to have been during the Laurentide ice sheet, which covered all of North America, and the Great Lakes region was frozen at this time. Now, I've reported on the Stonehenge at the bottom of Lake Michigan here, and it's obviously a man-made structure. They say this has to have been built over 9,000 years ago, and then it's filled in because of the melting of the Laurentide ice sheet. Well, if there was a huge glacier here, then they would have been setting those rocks on top of the glacier. And when that thing melted, it would have just filled up the Great Lakes. It would have never been dry ground. It would have never gone from ice to dry ground and then fill up the lake. You see what I'm saying? If this was all a glacier, then when it melted, the lake would be full. There never would have been a dry time to get down there and build your Stonehenge. Anyway, back to the Carolina Bays impact event. They found ejecta from this all down the East Coast, and then some split off over into Nebraska too. But that theory says that impact happened on the ice sheet and then threw these chunks of ice down to form the Carolina Bays. Elliptoids? Is that a word? I think I read that. But you've got all of these oblong depressions. Some of them are 15 meters deep, and these are all kind of pointing towards the Great Lakes area. And you can see how, it's like a splatter pattern. Some of them came in and just formed a circle, then others fell on top and kind of broke that circle that was there. And looking at the scale bar over here, those big ones right here are 2 kilometers across. From the ground, these just look like a bunch of lakes and ponds, and there are 500,000 of these spread out over Carolina and Georgia. So I don't know if he's describing this event here, but it's certainly in the right location. But apart from all of that, it is a first-hand account saying around 1340s, there was a big event, most likely an impact event in North America. I have another account that says a meteor struck towards the east of Europe, like over Turk-Merk-de-Jerk area, most likely, but it took out everything within 300 miles or something. Okay, so that's the physical sciences, nuts and bolts of the universe part of it. Now let's get into the woo-woo. It says, the defender ceased from visiting the people in bodily form, but appeared to the prophet. In a dream, he foretells the white man would cross the big waters and bring some liquors and buy up the red people's lands. He advised them not to comply with the wishes of the whites, lest they should ruin themselves and displease their maker. They would destroy the tree of peace and extinguish the great council fire at Onondaga, which was so long preserved to promote the national sovereignty. So this is still around the 1350s area, and they're saying that this was the last time they didn't see the god or whatever this was after this. But we're going to back this up, and you're going to see that someone visited them for thousands of years before this event, and for some reason doesn't come around anymore. Now, back to my never-ending debate about what the gods are. I know they called the stars and the luminaries in the sky gods at times. And here they don't say it's a god. They just call it the holder of the heaven. but I don't see how this can be taken as allegory here. What they're describing here is a sentient being that is smarter than them. By some inducement, a body of people was concealed in the mountain at the falls named Oswego. When the people were released from the mountain, they were visited by Wagan, the holder of the heavens, who had power to change himself into various shapes. Now, to me, that would be pretty high up on the little g God ladder to be able to turn yourself into whatever you wanted. But this shape-shifting something came to them and ordered the people to proceed towards the sunrise as he guided them. Yeah, you're not going to ask this thing any questions, are you? Certainly not in a disrespectful way. The guy turned into a bear and eat all of us. So we're just going to skip through some of the mentions here. Overall, what's going on is he's dividing them up into 6 tribes heading across the land. The people were yet in one language at that time. Some of the people went to the banks of the great water, but the main company returned the way they came on the banks of the river under the direction of the holder of the heavens. But they started out all as one language. The holder of the heavens directs one family to go over here. The family was named now Mohawk, but a speech divided, and their language was soon altered. And I don't think it takes long for that to happen. You know, we have a dictionary standardizing our language today, and it's changed a lot over the last 150, 200 years. And if you have no grammar and structure, then it's going to be all over the place real soon, I think. Then the holder of the heavens instructs them in the art of bows and arrows in the time of game and danger. Now, that's a piece of technology I've always found strange. Everybody around the world seems to know about bows and arrows. It's not a very intuitive thing. You don't just automatically think, hey, I'm going to cut this branch down and then take a piece of deer gut and tie it on there, and then I'm going to find a straight stick and I'm going to shoot something with it. I mean, I understand, cut yourself on a sharp rock, hey, make a knife out of it. But this is not intuitive, and everybody in the ancient world knew about this. It could be monkey see, monkey do, though. As soon as somebody comes up with something, it's not hard to copy it once that idea is in existence. Another non-intuitive thing is weaving and textiles. I think most of us could look at a sheep for a long time and not think, hey, I'm going to cut all his hair off, spin it together and make thread, then put all those threads together and make myself a blanket. So I guess this answers my questions on those things. A shapeshifter from heaven taught us how to do that. Then the holder of the heavens returns to the 5 families and forms a mode of confederacy. So he teaches them a form of governance. A little about their mythology is there was a good spirit, bad spirit that brought about all of creation. It's a pretty Gnostic, dualistic point of view. And about this time, it is supposed that an agent from the superior power solemnly visits the families, and he instructs them in various things respecting the infinity, matrimony, morals, rules, worship, etc. Then warns them that an evil spirit was in the world and would induce the people to commit trespasses against the rules he had given them. And he offers them favorable promises for obedience to rules. The souls would enter the place of happiness. But to the disobedient, their souls would be sent to a state of misery. And he gives the seeds for corn, beans, squashes, potatoes, and tobacco with directions on how to cultivate them. And he gives them the dogs to aid in pursuing game. That's a good God. If you're going to make man, you got to make his best friend. When he ended the interview of consolation, he leaves. Now, I got to say, their version of the creator is a lot better than our Genesis version of it, where, hey, I told you not to do that, get out. Because they say that this spirit, this whatever it was, guided them on how to live a civilized life. And that we as humans understood the concept of agriculture and game management from the beginning here. And then the shapeshifter leaves. Then, after about 150 winters since the people left the mountains, the holder of the heavens was absent, and they were invaded by the monsters called Konaranene, i.e. the flying heads, which devoured several people of the country. The flying heads made invasions in the night, but the people were attentive to escape by leaving their huts and concealing themselves in other huts. There was an old woman living in one of these huts, and she was sitting near the fire, parching some acorns, so drying out some acorns, when the monstrous head made its appearance at the door. While viewing the woman, it was amazed that she could eat coals of the fire by which the monsters were put to flight. So she's sitting there eating these acorns, and it thinks she's eating the coals. And ever since, the heads disappeared and were supposed concealed in the earth. Then, after a short time, the people were invaded by the monster of the deep, a lake serpent. Then the 5 families started making forts to protect themselves. It sounded like the holder of the heavens stayed out of this one. Then, perhaps about 1,250 years before Columbus, 250 since they left the mountains, the people had become numerous and had a nice peaceful time. But then a powerful tribe of the wilderness, the Stonish giants, overran the country, and the warriors were immediately collected for service. The Stonish giants were so ravenous that they devoured the people of almost every town in the country. But happily, the holder of the heavens again visits the people, and he observes that the people were in distressed condition on the account of the giants. So he changes himself into a giant and induces them to take the lead to destroy the people of the country. So he basically gets them to hide in this ditch for a surprise attack. And at dawn, the holder of the heavens ascended from upon the heights, and he overwhelmed them by a mass of rocks. The only one escaped to announce the dreadful fate. And since that event, the Stonish giants left the country and seeks asylum in the regions of the north. Now, when I hear rocks falling on giants, I always think impact event, but they have specific impact events. I'm not going to try to dig through and find it right now, but there's one mention of a village in these intermediary years here that a star fell on it. But they go through a lot of monsters here, several different serpents. There's attacks by one monster that the author suspects as being woolly mammoths, and even a great mosquito that would suck people dry. The holder of the heavens had to come take care of that one too. And after a couple days, he finally overtook it and killed it near the Salt Lake Onondaga, and the blood became small mosquitoes. Then a visitor appeared to them as a very old man. He appeared among the people for a while, and he taught them many things, how to respect their deceased friends and how to love their relations. He informed the people that the whites beyond the great water had killed their maker, but he rose again. And he warns them that when the whites would come some future day to take possession of the big island, and that it was impossible to prevent it. The red children would melt away like snow before the heat. The aged man became sick, and he told them to get different kinds of roots to cure the diseases, and also showed them the manner of mourning. The aged man died among them, and they buried him, but soon after, some person went to the grave and found that he had risen, and never heard of him since. So the way they tell the story, the old man was different from the holder of the heavens, but was probably like an emissary or a portion of the good spirit. I don't know. But he told him that a portion of that spirit, Jesus, had showed up to the whites and they offed him. Which, I don't know. Was that even the whites? But anyway, the holder of the heavens visited them from time to time when things got bad, all the way up until 150 years before Columbus at the 1300s event. And then he stopped visiting the people in bodily form, but appeared sometimes to the prophets. So did something change on the cosmic level at that time to where he could no longer visit physically? I don't know, but he did say that their way of life was at an end, and that kind of sucks. I think everybody in a body here in North America would probably be happier with the old way of life than we have today. I think there's something simplistic and satisfying about the old way of, it's springtime, plant your stuff. It's fall, harvest your stuff, go hunting. But I'll say it again, no indigenous tribe type structure has ever withstood technology coming through and them just saying, nah, I'm good. So anyway, they say their God was still here 750 years ago. If you correct the timelines, maybe other gods were still around at that time. But one thing's for sure is now I've got concrete evidence of the cataclysm here in North America in 1350. The dating is perfect. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll catch you on the next one. Static out.